Outsourcing predicted to grow. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. I've got my stein of coffee, and I thought we'd have a look at this article from ABC News because it's discussing, well, the trend in working from home and how this may become work done overseas. Now, I'm in an industry as an architect. We compete with firms that were outsourcing work. I'd be putting tenders in, I'd hire local students and we'd train them up, and I'd find that I'd be struggling to compete with some of the bigger firms. I'd put my fee in and they go, Florian, you double the other person. I'm going, but this is how long it takes. I've got to pay this, this, or this. And then I started to realize that they were offshoring the work. I had a colleague, her entire business was set up just to get all the work for housing, get all the work done offshores, and just have people here in Australia marking stuff up. Now, I can appreciate that it reduces your risk in dealing with staff, it reduces any of the, the costs significantly. And if you manage it well, you can get some advantages. I've tried it and it's failed terribly. It was faster for me just to do the work myself than to offshore it. But you also take an opportunity away from the generation coming up to learn the skills that are necessary. Often to be an architect, you should do your time being a drafty monkey, solving the problems. So let's have a look at this. Will this mean more work is maintained in Australia or more work will be heading overseas? And this is written by business reporter Daniel Siffer. So let's have a look. Forced away from city centres to slowly spread the pandemic, or to slow the spread of the pandemic, the work from home revolution has shown many jobs can be done from the suburbs as easily as they were in humming offices housing thousands of workers. Could the shift be the change that regional Australia has long waited for, or does it mark the moment Australians have to compete in the global market for jobs with equally qualified but much cheaper workers? And here's the thing. Australia is not an advanced economy, everyone. And I will bring up the Observatory of Economic Complexity just to hammer that home. And I'm getting a database error here on their website, just to compare us, to highlight some of the challenges that Australia faces. We'll jump over here, we'll bring that up. You can see we're ranked 73rd in the world with regards to complexity of our economy. Now, Rachel Bragg is a paraplanner preparing documents and complicated modelling for the clients of financial planners in gleaming towers in the major capital cities. But she does this from Candaga, population 665, 50 kilometres inland from Noosa in Queensland. It's possible with technology the way it is. You don't need to be in a big city, Miss Bragg, director of Frank Paraplanning, said. Particularly if you have a professional job, you can be in rural areas and still make a really good success of it. But the problem is, there's probably someone overseas that can do it for a fraction of the cost. And if you can find the good people to do it, I had a mate who was paying like $100,000 for a estimator to quote on his jobs. And what you can do, there's a business set up that specifically gets people in the Philippines, houses them in an office. They're your employee. They work for you. You develop a relationship with them at a fraction of the cost, even with all the overheads. And they love it because they're getting paid well above the normal wage over there, and their cost of living is lower. Maybe that's the next step, Australians moving overseas. Might have more freedom. The way Miss Bragg is employed and employs others is called BPO, Business Process Outsourcing. Financial planners meet clients and sell them plans, then pay her to do the grunt work of drafting legal agreements to cement the deal. It is long established for frontline tasks such as call centers and help desks to be contracted out to companies that specialize in running and maintaining those services. As Athena Consulting founder Francis Quinn describes it, you will have almost certainly used a BPO service if you have ever queried an online order, inquired about a service, or checked on an invoice you're meant to be paid. The service is generally somebody who's white labeled, so they present themselves as though they are your company, she said. Ms. Quinn works with call centers, but that simplistic description undersells what those services do. The internet and apps have largely killed off simple queries such as checking a bank balance or booking an appointment. What is left are difficult queries and managing what is called customer experience or CX. It's the whole life of a customer's contact with a company, from being found, set up with a service, having loyalty managed, being retained, and getting them to pay up when needed. BPO is how you give discrete pieces of work to someone to complete them on your behalf, she explained. And that is important because BPO services are now doing increasingly complex business tasks that could change how organizations divvy up their workforce. Now, what I will draw to your attention, I'm just going to find this here. This was from the RBA that we looked at yesterday. Where is it? The RBA charts and latest economic data. Here we have it. And we'll just scroll through to find this, showing the changes in manufacturing to Australia. Now, I could be more organized, but we'll see it here in a previous video that we looked at. You can see private residential approvals, house prices, everything going down, business investment going down. Industry share of business investment, look at, mining, shot up, everything else is down. But the interesting one that I want to draw your attention to is when we find it, and I'll keep rambling till we do, is you can see here, employment growth by industry, household services up, construction slightly up, public administration up, other up, business services has significantly grown since just March 2013. But now with this move to online business, working from home, they're now potentially going to compete with offshore workers, offshore businesses, offshore competitors. Countries where the government isn't putting such a huge burden on their citizens, where they can afford to live a much cheaper life, where food is cheaper, where cost of living is cheaper, where housing hasn't been bubbled to insane levels. This is the thing, why these, the fruit pickers will come over and work bloody hard, and they'll earn below award, but they don't care because they can go home and they can buy a house or pay for education or some significant purchase with that money. So, regional saviour. Australia sells an image of untamed outback and rolling paddocks, but the stark truth is we're one of the most urbanised nations on earth. Yeah, that's the thing. When you go to the country here in Australia, you still get 4G everywhere, guys, for a lot of the places. We were at the country family's house, and, they had faster internet than me here in the city. Our population clings to the coast, packed overwhelmingly in a small number of capital cities, growing at huge rates. Regional centres and rural areas have long sought to lure employers to their areas or to import professional level and well-paid jobs. But is BPO the answer or a further threat? Shutting offices and sending workers home during the pandemic may have opened the eyes of some bosses to a tough reality. They do not need as many staff as before. I think that's clearly a risk, and it's obviously a risk that the government's worried about as well, according to KPMG, Australia's Dr. Bernard Ryan. The consulting firm's chief economist said the design of the JobKeeper wage subsidy paid by the company to cement the link between employer and employees showed the federal government's concern about businesses using technology to shed workers. The moment that you make it easier for them to break that connection, the harder it is going to be for those people to find those jobs back in the workforce, even as the economy starts to pick up. The enforced work from home period has starkly exposed how much workers produce and who is really needed, he added. Well, isn't it the Pareto principle? 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. Well, I wonder how many people will lose their job after JobKeeper, will be made redundant after JobKeeper. What you're going to see is businesses realize that they're in fact able to produce either a similar amount of output or something close to it with much fewer workers, he warned. That's the concern that I'm sure the government has. So yes, you may get a productivity pickup as a consequence of the adoption of new technologies and new ways to work. It's going to come at the expense of people in the labour force. Well, there's the other thing. We looked at yesterday another chart from, and once again, I can't find it. We looked at another chart here with regards to productivity going down over time, hours worked, and we'll find that here. You can see here how hours worked over time has gone down on a per capita basis. So our population has increased. I'll need to bring these charts. Oh, I've lost it. I'll need to bring these charts into my regular routine of ones that are important, because this is quite important. Quite important here. You can see there's the unemployment rate. There's the average hours work, employment and hours worked. And I'll link to this in. Oh, damn it! Go on to another video. Yep. I'll link to this chart pack so you can have a look at it all. But you can see the average hours worked have steadily gone down, while total hours have gone up, and employment has gone up, but the average hours worked have gone down. So people are working less on average. So that's one way you could argue why wages haven't been going up. We're just efficiencies just aren't there. So the biggest company you've never heard of. Probe Group employs 6,000 people in Australia and even more in the Asian region. To answer phones, deal with customers and more. You've probably never heard of them, even if you have spoken with them, and that is how they like it. We actually consider that we are our client's business. We embed ourselves within them, and we provide services customized, designed for them, says Chief Executive Andrew Hume. In fact, if you speak to people and say, who do you work for, they typically say the client they're representing. Mr. Hume says the bulk of work being sent offshore is less complex and thus more likely to be automated in the near future. Locals are being engaged, many in regional locations, on more difficult, sensitive and high-value tasks. Things like financial and accounting, help desk support, and what are now being called knowledge services, he outlined. Very specialized tasks like web app development, search engine optimization, support, content moderation, mortgage orientation, so very precise and complex knowledge tasks. With mainly complicated customer queries left and concerns about data security and privacy, companies are now reshoring jobs. Westpac just brought 1,000 call center jobs back from India and the Philippines. There's a shift to bring work back onshore, Mr. Hume said. Companies create a bit of risk for themselves by being overly concentrated in countries where the country wasn't able to recover from the pandemic. And where work is coming back onshore, we see it move into a work-from-home setting. So the global market goes both ways. From Singapore, Charles Ferguson runs an employer of record, a way of companies to hire people in different countries without having to open their own business there. For him, where businesses are based or the location where a task gets completed does not need to be as fixed and permanent as an office tower in an Australian capital. I would direct attention to the overseas expansion opportunities for small to medium and large businesses in Australia, Mr. Ferguson, Globalization Partners General Manager for the Asia Pacific region. The go-between sees the potential for Australian companies to expand, matched by putting Australian workers into a globally accessible talent pool. But then you need to compete on a global level. You need to compete with other countries. Maybe that will be calls for reducing the burden that the state is placing on people here in Australia. I can't see it. Can you see it? So the opportunity for workers, not only in the major cities on the East Coast and Perth in the West, but also in the regions, to now have access to a global job market is a tremendous opportunity. I'm a constant optimist, but I think it's a glass half full story, not a scary story. Well, he's right. This does give you greater opportunities. I mean, I looked at, potentially providing architectural services offshore. Just the fees weren't in it. The fees were not in it. It's just so low. It's just crazy. So out of office, out of cities. High unemployment looks set to drag on people's lives and economy for years. Technology and the drive to business processes outsourcing opens up regional and global competition to previously protected high-wage jobs. The dispersed piecemeal work may benefit some people, but has the potential to be a precarious and insecure way to base employment. Well, this is the thing. I think secure employment is going to be a thing of the past in many ways. There's going to be challenges and people need to adapt. People need to be more flexible in this environment because I don't think it's going anywhere. I think this is going to be something that everyone will have to deal with, particularly white-collar office-based work. It's a massive opportunity within the entire labour market, says Francis Quinn, who consults to the BPO sector, to realize that I don't need to have a full-time payroll person and a full-time marketing person and a full-time facilities person in my organization in order to deliver the outcomes that my organization needs to deliver. The tools for remote working, email, video conferencing, and file sharing have been available for almost 2 decades, but Australian companies have been loath to allow employees to work from home, even as commuting times have exploded due to suburban population growth. Whether the response to the pandemic is a permanent shift away from what has been a magnetic growth in the major capital cities, we'll have to wait and see. But proponents, like Mr. Quinn, see the normalization of work-from-home practices and more business process outsourcing as inevitable for Australian companies. This pandemic has forced their hand in creating some of that flexibility, she said. And that might start to tip them over the edge to realizing that there is another way. Sitting on her veranda, half hour from the nearest traffic light, the paraplanner Rachel Bragg feels the change. She grew up in Coolaman near Wagga Wagga and watched young people like her leave town to find work opportunities. Because there's no industry, there's no work there for the people, she said. One of the main reasons for creating this business is so we can create those jobs and you don't need to go into an office. You can effectively have the big city jobs, but out in rural communities, it's important. So we'll have to see, everyone. What do you think? Do you think this will be a boost for the rural communities here in Australia? Or do you think it'll just mean more work overseas, more work outsourced offshore? I suspect it'll mean more work offshore. I think just the pain that an onerous situation here with regards to our industrial relations, all of the laws, just these rigmarole of hiring people and letting go of people here in Australia will mean more work will be outsourced. And then you're competing with people overseas, so more people will go for the cheaper option. I think that's the sad reality we all have to face. What do you think, everyone? Do you think it's a negative or a potential for opportunity? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support the content I create here, there is a few ways you can. You can join the channel on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us using our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or Kucoin. You can buy merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, everyone. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next episode.